Yes, our God is a mountain mover, and you know what? He's still moving mountains every day. And the good news is He can move your mountains too. Hi there, this is Chuck Cooper, host of It's a God Thing radio program. Thank you for joining us today. We sure are glad you're here. You're about to listen to some awesome interviews with believers in Jesus Christ who will tell you how God has revealed and proved Himself to them by moving mountains they were unable to move by themselves. They say that their stories can only be described as a God thing. Ready for a real blessing? Alrighty then, let's do this God thing. We're sitting here today with Bill Cairns from Wilmer, Minnesota. Bill owned his own business, and he had just about run the wheels off his pickup truck, and he needed to find a replacement. Bill, tell us how you found this replacement truck.
Well, it all happened as a friend stopped and talked to me one day, and he said, Bill, there's a red truck sitting along the highway and got a for sale sign on it. And he said, I think maybe you might be interested in something like that. And so my first question was, how new is it? Because I'm very conservative and I don't like to spend a lot of money. So my plan was to probably get something 2 or 3 years newer than what I was driving. So I said, well, how new is it? And he said, well, I think it's probably about 4 years old. And I said, well, that'd probably fit in the category. So I thought, well, I'll go take a look at it. But before I did, I said, God, if this is a truck that we should have, I do need some signs. And so I prayed, God, if this is a truck, first of all, it's got to be a lady that needs to sell her truck. And I thought, well, that'd probably be a good value. And I said, well, secondly, it has to have very low miles on it. And then I said, amen. After I said amen, I said, Lord, that's asking too much. Just forget about the mile part. One fleece is good enough. So Carol and I got together and we decided to go down the road and take a look at this truck. And we drove up to it and it was parked along the highway. And I said, wow, that looks like a whole lot newer than what I had expected and probably a whole lot more expensive. But we drove up and looked at the note in the window and it said 9,500 miles. And I go, wow, that's ridiculously low. Lord, I didn't plan on buying this new of a truck. And we looked it over, couldn't get into it. The people that had it parked there didn't live there. Just a phone number. So on our way back to our home, I said, Carol, you really like that truck, don't you? And she said, yes, that would be a good truck for you. Got home, called that phone number, and didn't get any response. So I left a message, left my phone number, and just went off to work and said, well, that's fine. I guess we'll kind of forget about that. About 3 hours later, I got a phone call, and sure enough, it was a lady on the phone. And I thought, well, okay. And in about our third sentence, she said, my husband and I are starting a business, and we purchased a new home, and I have to sell my truck. And I said, oh, Lord, both fleeces that I had laid out. And so I contemplated if this was just an excuse. But I realized that this is exactly the truck that God knew that I needed even before I needed it. Because a couple years later, it came in exactly the truck that I needed to pull a new camper that we got, or the different camper that we got. So it definitely was something that God led us to, something 2 years before we even expected what we really needed.
Do you often, when you pray about a decision, do you often lay a fleece, as you mentioned?
Yes, because I have lots of doubts, even though I've been a Christian for many, many years. I'm still a very practical person, so I need clear direction. But I don't need writing in the sky, because then it wouldn't take any faith.
That's true. That's exactly true. Well, Bill, thank you very much for sharing that somewhat humorous story, the way you put it, express it, because God sure did answer your prayer specifically in that case. Bill, would you say that getting this beautiful red truck was a God thing?
Definitely a God thing.
So Bill got his truck, just the one he had prayed for. Now, that's a God thing in itself, but as it turns out, getting that particular truck wasn't the end of the story. After concluding the interview, Bill and I sat chatting when I remembered that Bill had told us that God had anticipated a need for that truck 2 years before Bill realized the need. So, here's the rest of Bill's amazing God thing story. How in the world did God anticipate this need? Tell us that story.
Well, it all started out on a Sunday afternoon when a group of sowers, as we were working on a project in Arizona, decided that we just needed to have an outing. So there was a RV show, and the ladies, several men, we got together and we went to the RV show. The men went one direction, the ladies went another direction. And Carol came home, Carol's my wife, and she came home and she had picked up a brochure, not really shopping, but it was a brochure on a camper, and she dropped it off in the house, and we were camping at the time. That evening, I picked it up, looked at it, and came through a floor plan in the camper and said, Carol, someday this would be the type of camper that we should have for doing the solar projects and the type of lifestyle that we have. But what we have at the present time, it's very adequate, so we won't worry about it. So I just laid down the brochure and didn't think much more about it. But of course, later in the evening, I got on the computer and I said, I wonder if a camper like that might just be for sale on eBay. And so I looked and searched, and sure enough, there was a camper, RV, fifth wheel camper just like that. And it had a damaged roof and a few other problems because it had been through a windstorm.
Bill, is it the same floor plan?
Exact same floor plan, exact same model number. Everything was identical to what I was looking at on that brochure.
And this was a couple hours later after you looked at the brochure, you're now on your computer, just wanted to check it out, just plain out of curiosity.
Just out of curiosity, I thought, I wonder what something like that would be selling for.
Sure.
And the bid at the time was about 1/10 of retail price. And I thought, God, is this something that you have in mind for us? Because I'm a handyman, I fix things, so a little damage on it really didn't make that much difference. So called up my son and said, how do I go bidding on eBay? And
the kids know, don't they?
Yes. So that is something that I started, and I thought, well, I got to contact the person, get some more information. I contacted the seller, and he said, you've got to pay for it right away at the end of the auction. And I said, well, okay, sorry, I was thinking about it, but I can't do that because I'm in Arizona. You're in Ohio, and I bank in Minnesota, so that's impossible. So I just hung up and told Carol, well, I guess that's the end of that. And then I prayed and I said, God, it's all in your hands. If this is to be, it's all up to you, because I have no control of how to pay for this over the air or through the mail and that fast. And lo and behold, the next day the seller called and he said, I think we could make some kind of arrangements if you become a successful bidder.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, well, I'm not sure that this is possible. But I said, well, we'll check it out a little bit more, and talked to my son some more, and did some bidding. And after the end of the auction, lo and behold, I was the highest bidder. I needed to make some arrangements to how to get it from Ohio to Minnesota, and for me to get from Arizona to Minnesota. But it was going to arrive in Minnesota before I was. So I had to arrange with a friend to see if he could get some money in order to be able to pay for it when it got delivered. But somehow God provided for that, because he delayed the shipment and the delivery truck couldn't make connections. And so by the time he got delivered, the seller got it delivered to Minnesota, I was already home.
Oh boy.
And so all of the details worked out. Now, the interesting thing about this is I didn't even know I needed a camper like that. But 2 years later, another sower friend said, how about going to Alaska? And so that was going to be 6 months, and our old RV would not have made it to Alaska. And we worked on a solar project in Alaska and was on the road for 6 months. And it was exactly what we needed. Since that, we oftentimes live in it up to 9 months at a time.
Oh, boy.
That was not in our plans, but God knew what was going to happen in the future, and He provided for us even before we knew it.
What a great story, Bill. You mentioned Sowers. Would you tell our listeners a little bit about that organization?
SOWERS stands for Servants on Wheels Ever Ready. So the acronym SOWER. Group of RVers work ministry projects throughout the United States, Canada. We work for 3 weeks out of a month for each project. The majority of the people are retired, but these are couples where we are able to volunteer our labor to many ministry areas, ministry groups, and have an excellent time of fellowship.
So you are assigned a project, or you can choose a project you're interested in working at and sign up for that. Is that the idea?
Yes, we are able to go through the book that lists all the different projects, pick the areas that we would be able to best fit the needs that they have, pray about where God would want us, and through the 8 years that we have worked on the SOWER projects, each project we are just amazed that whatever the project needs are, there is always somebody there that has expertise in that area that knows exactly how to do that project to fulfill the requirements.
You say you've been doing this for 8 years, Bill. How many of these month-long projects have you and Carol worked?
We have worked, I think, 27 projects now.
27 projects.
Yes.
That's amazing. Well, thank you, Bill, so much for sharing your story about your RV today and your camper. What a great story that is. Bill, would you say that getting this new camper 2 years before you knew you needed it was a God thing?
Definitely a God thing.
Oh, Bill, thank you so much. We appreciate it. God bless you. Wow, what a great story. I don't know about you, but we here at It's a God Thing Radio are inspired and encouraged and even awed when we hear stories like the one you're hearing today. We think God Thing stories prove to all who hear them how God continues to work every day in the lives of His believers. We also believe strongly that sharing God Thing stories with not yet believers might just cause them to remember similar events in their own lives. Hopefully, those remembrances will cause them to consider that there may be something to God and Jesus after all. Sharing your own God Thing story, yes, your own story, is a great way to witness to your family, friends, co-workers, schoolmates, and even strangers. Who won't listen when you begin a conversation by saying, "My goodness, you won't believe what happened to me a while back," or, "Gosh, I'm so excited about what happened to a couple at our church. Let me tell you about it." Then tell your own story or share one you've heard here. Doing so just might cause someone to accept Jesus as Savior and Lord. Now let's get back to today's program. We'd like to welcome Frank Rosendahl from Ham Lake, Minnesota as our guest today. Frank said something to me the other day that really sort of set me back. What he said was, Chuck, if it weren't for my wife and the Lord, today I would probably be an alcoholic.
Correct.
Frank, why would you say such a thing, or tell us why you believe that?
Well, I'd already been in the Marine Corps and spent three years with them, 20 months in Japan, so I was away from friends and loved ones.
Sure.
For that time. So I did a lot of carousing. I was a heathen to the core. I was a heathen as far as it could go, and did a lot of running around and a lot of everything. Well, we got back to after I got out of the service, a buddy of mine and we were racing cars for fun, a way to get rid of our money.
Yeah, okay.
And we were going to have a get together, and it happened to be at a girl's cabin who went to school with my wife.
Mm-hmm.
I was the odd one out. I didn't have anybody for me to be with, and my wife and her girlfriend were on their way to a school play, and my buddy and another friend and his girlfriend, they drove by and asked the girls if they wanted to go to a party. My wife's a Christian, and I don't know what went through her mind, but somehow she said, yeah, I'll make something different for her, I guess. So she showed up and we ended up paired together. We had a decent evening together and talking, and I was half drunk, if not further, by then. She told me that she didn't know if she should be around me because of what I was. And I said, why? She said, well, I'm a born-again believer. I said, a what? I said, I didn't know that much about that at the time. She says, yeah. But I asked her if we could see her again. She said, sure. Oh, well. So she gave me her phone number, and we went out on a couple dates, and then I started getting kind of serious for me. I'm 5 years older than my wife, so I've been around where she hadn't been, and she was senior in high school. I sort of said, for me it wasn't kidding, but I think she thought it was, and I said, will you marry me one of these days? She said, I can't marry you until you accept the Lord as your Savior. I said, that's a stumbling block.
Yeah, you'd never encountered that before, had you?
No, never been around a born-again Christian, really, that I know of. Then, so we kept going together. In 1957, I bought a brand new Buick, and it was my pride and joy.
Sure.
But we were still racing, so we were racing on Wednesdays and Sunday afternoon, so there was no time to go to church. But I still had this new car, and I loved it.
Right.
Quote unquote, I guess.
Yeah.
And then but at Christmas time they had a party I had worked in a warehouse, and they had a Christmas party. So I went to the party, and I got too drunk to drive, but so I was sober enough not to drive. Right. So I just left the car there. And when I came to pick it up in the next morning, it was gone. I just figured they'd hauled it away because it was in the no parking zone for the daytime. But what I had done is left the ignition unlocked and the door unlocked, and somebody had taken it for a joyride.
Oh my goodness.
And they had piled it up. The car had just over 1,000 miles, if that. So I figured if I wasn't drinking, I wouldn't have been that careless.
Right.
So that's how the Lord took drinking away from me. I quit right then.
You quit right then?
I quit right then. I had this church that my wife, or Kathy, was going to, and they were all praying for me, and the power of prayer is great. It really works.
So you lost your car, totaled your car, and you realized that, again, that if you hadn't been drunk, you probably wouldn't have left the key in the ignition and the doors unlocked.
If I wouldn't have been drinking, I wouldn't even been there to start with.
Yeah, oh, I got you.
So the Lord did take that away from me. And then I smoked too, but I was back to the racing. We were racing all the time, and she kept trying to get me to go to church.
But you couldn't because you were racing.
Because we had time up using for that. So then we had a high-speed Nissan motor, so we were working on that one Saturday afternoon and getting ready for Sunday racing, and the fan blade come sailing out and hit me in the stomach and almost killed me.
Ooh.
So then that took the racing away, because I was done with racing
I bet.
for a while. So then I started going to church while I was healing, and then we quit racing altogether. A year and a half later, after I'd met my wife, and with all the prayer, I was sitting in church one Sunday night after we had a evangelist there the week before.
Mm-hmm.
And he seemed like a down-to-earth man, and we went to just about every meeting that week. But Sunday night we were there, and as I was standing up for closing prayer, the pastor walked by and says, "Are you ready yet, Frank?" I said, No, I'm
The pastor came to you?
He came by and walked down the
out?
aisle. He just walked down the aisle. I said, "Are you ready?" I said, No, I'm not ready. And he probably got about 3 pews down from me, and something, had to be the Lord, pushed me out into the aisle, because my wife's hands were small, and whatever it was caught me across both shoulder blades, pushed me out in the aisle. So I figured, well, the Lord wants me to go forward. So I went forward and accepted the Lord.
My goodness. And you felt this?
I literally felt it being pushed. So then after we got done with that, the service, And I went out and I was going to have a cigarette to sort of steady my nerves.
Sure.
Quote unquote, if they were,
Yeah.
that's what they were. And I couldn't have stuck anything worse in my mouth than that cigarette. It tasted terrible. It was a brand new cigarette,
My
brand new
goodness.
pack. And I just threw them out the window and I quit.
So, and how long a time period was this now before your car was demolished and you quit drinking cold turkey, and then you accepted Christ, and He put a bad taste in your mouth and you quit cold turkey with cigarettes? How long a time period?
Between December and September. It was December I quit drinking. The following September I accepted the Lord and quit smoking.
Oh
cold
boy,
turkey.
about 9 months, 10 months.
Then the following year in August, we got married.
Oh, good for you. But you had a couple conditions before that Kathy laid down.
Correct.
Frank, let me ask you something very personal. Of course, what you've just explained to us is personal. Do you give credit to the Lord for putting Kathy in your path and for arranging for y'all to meet and arranging for her to be, quote, stubborn? I bet you thought she was stubborn, at least initially, in her demands. Did the Lord orchestrate all this for you?
Oh yes, sure. He's got a plan. He's got a plan for us all. We just got to be able to recognize it when it's in front of us.
And now, how long have you and Kathy been married now?
Just over 50 years.
Oh, bless your heart. Well, she's a sweetheart. And Frank, we appreciate you sharing this personal story with us. It's going to be an encouragement to some of our listeners. And we appreciate that so much. Obviously, Frank, you've got to believe that Kathy was a God thing, that meeting her was a God thing.
Yes, I do, because she has been great for me. I'm glad that the Lord thought enough of me to give me her.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Well, we're happy to have with us today Anika Williams from Kingston, Jamaica. And she has a really neat story about how God answered a prayer for her very quickly when she was in a time of danger. So welcome to the program, Anika, and tell us this story. This is a great story. Tell us about it.
Oh, my story is about a time when I was coming from school on a rainy day. The place was all jammed with traffic and stuff, and I was taking a cab to go home, and the cab turned off on a road that you could turn off to get to an easier way. And there were other cars turning off on the intersection also. As the car turned off, a gunman ran in the front of in the road and stopped the car. And when I looked at the side, there were two other men with guns standing at the wall. And he stopped the driver and was asking him for money. Meanwhile, the driver was there. And I saw the gun, I started panicking and my heart was beating so fast. I was trying not to look at the gunman because I didn't want him to think that I was trying to identify who he was. And then I realized that the driver took something out of his car and threw it out at the gunman. And same time I looked at the other side, I saw a man pointing his gun towards the car. And then I start to pray in my heart, asking God to cover everyone in the car so that we may live. And then apparently I saw the driver drive off. When I asked the driver what happened, he said he knew one of the gunmen from high school, and he gave them a change so that they would not rob us of all our money and stuff. So I think God had saved my life from not being killed or being robbed. And on the other day, I heard that there were many cars that had turned off on the same road and they are being robbed of many money and jewelry and stuff by the gunmen.
So you were in a car, and how many other people were with you?
There were 3 passengers in the back. I was in the front, so it's 4 of us.
4 of you, and did you know the other people?
No, it was just a taxi that we took to go home.
Okay, so you all got in the same taxi, and
Yeah.
you were riding home. Now, did your prayer, Did you say it out loud or just in your heart?
No, I said it in my heart because I didn't want anybody to know that I was scared.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I could not show that you were too scared because I guess the gunman would panic and probably attack you.
Yes. So obviously you were very frightened.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
It's the first time I'm seeing a gun pointing at me. And I didn't even want to look, but I was looking in the corner of my eyes.
Oh, I see.
Because I didn't want the man to see that I was looking at him.
What did the driver say afterwards? Did he say anything to you after?
No, we only asked him if he knew them, and he said he knew one of them.
From high school?
Yeah.
And how much further did you have to go before you got home?
About 20 minutes drive.
And nobody said anything?
Everybody was like talking about how they were scared and they were frightened.
Well, sure.
And what could have happened. And the driver said he was lucky because he had a lot of money in his car, which they could have taken away and stuff.
Well, so it's a good thing that the driver knew the gunman from high school and gave him some money, and so y'all could go on safely.
Yeah.
Well, gosh, that's a great story, Anika, and we appreciate you sharing with us today. Would you say that this was an immediate answer to your prayers?
Oh, yes, it is, because I guess God answered my prayer immediately as I prayed and asked him to cover the car and cover everyone in the car and to protect us that we may reach home safe.
So you would think this answer to prayer then is a God thing?
Yes.
Wow, what a great half hour this has been. Tune in next time for more great God Thing stories, and tell all your friends to tune in too. Oh yeah, one more thing. If you or someone you know has a verifiable story which needs to be told, please email a brief summary to us at mystory@itsagodthingradio.com. That's my story, all one word, at itsagodthingradio.com. See you next time.